questions and not answered. The networking events were phenomenal, and I can only imagine what all the higher education institutions that were in that ballroom, when they saw those doors open and 900 women walk in, what that was like for them, because they had a captive audience, but also they had an audience with distinct goals. And that's what inspired me most about that group, about the group as a whole. Just doing random samplings and conversations, you all have goals. You all know what you want and where you're going and what your possibilities may be. So here it is, like a selection for you in one ballroom or one group. So my experience at Nick Whistle, I did a lot of compare and contrast, because the first time I was a freshman on the Ohio State University campus, 18 years old, and so all these years have gone by, and I was trying to look at it from the eyes of the younger generation and think, wow, so much has changed, but yet so much remained the same as to women's issues and some of the things that we faced back then. So I was constantly in my head doing the compare contrast of experiences and what it was like to be 20, and then the icebreaker session, when the question, what does it mean to be a feminist? And the diversity of answers, but then the similarity in the answer, and I was coming at it from a different direction with some of my answers because of my personal experiences and where I am right now in my life, but the answers that each individual gave were, I'd like you to share some of those answers. Were you at the icebreaker, Joe? Okay, so we'll just ask you, how do you define what is a feminist?
I think a feminist is a woman who has the ability to choose what she believes in it, and the society and the community help her to have that kind of choice, and who is empowered and independent to have bodily autonomy and reproductive choice, career choices, and things like that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that response. It's about choice, and actually during that icebreaker exercise, Andrea and I were standing like right next to each other. So as our partners were asking us what we identify with as being feminist, we both kind of like simultaneously said the same answer, which was kind of great. It was like literally happened at the same exact moment. But I started out, and this was at the very beginning of the conference, and I started out by saying that I generally don't like to label or define myself. So I kind of like more of the individualism. I don't at the beginning of the conference didn't necessarily identify with the traditional term of feminist. So it was kind of interesting to see that transition at the beginning of the conference and being like, well, I don't like to confine myself or label myself by any terms. But by the end of the conference, I completely learned that that term in itself is so universal, and there's not one type. It's basically a mindset of female empowerment by any means, whatever that means to you yourself, what that means to your community members. So a lot of people turn away from that term, especially with our generation. I have friends that were a part of the women's empowerment and success series that we put on, and they help, but then at the same time they're like, oh, no, I'm not a feminist. And they were very clear and distinct about that. So I don't know why that is happening necessarily with the younger generation, but at Nick Whistle we learned it's not a definitive and absolute term that means one thing or the other. So each individual woman in this room, each individual woman in this nation, it's basically just the overwhelming sense of empowerment and whatever that means to you yourself as an individual.
So we're standing shoulder to shoulder, and the question was exactly that. And at the same time, I don't necessarily agree with labels put on women.
Yeah, I said it at the exact same moment. Yeah.
And the response from the person across from me, the person said, well, I'm offended by that. I say I am a feminist, and this is why. but there was respect. It was a
Mutual respect,
respectful
right.
dialogue. I don't remember what your person said back to you, but when the person across from me said, well, I am a feminist and I'm offended that you wouldn't consider yourself a feminist. Why is that? And then the discussion continued.
From there, yeah.
So,
I have to agree with Alyssa. Like, really promoting diversity, being a feminist is not just one set thing. To me, going in the mindset, it was about making connections with like-minded people to promote equality and diversity at the same time. So I really didn't really say, oh yeah, I'm a feminist and, you know, all women empowerment. It's not just about, it is about women, but also it's about equality for everyone and diversity. So that's how I feel. That's the type of feminist I am. I'm looking out for everyone. So.
and it goes back to that not wanting to be pigeonholed as
Right.
one thing, because, and that came from growing up in the 70s and the 80s of, well, you're this, so you will be this. Or you're not good at math, so let's put you in these classes. And now it's about opening the doors and saying, you know what, give it a try. Just see what your potential is and could be.
Yeah, to me also feminist is all about empowerment. And AUW, of course, you know, that's what AUW, that's one of their main missions. Empower us in so many areas. And just to give you an idea how, you know, this just, it's something that is in every woman's mind and heart. And that is, you know, everybody's a feminist, and even guys, some of the guys are feminists. Let me just tell you a quick story about this. I was at the Harvard Business School reunion about a year ago, and Sheryl Sandberg was one of she's the COO of the Facebook. She was making a presentation, and we were talking about her book called Leaning In. I think some of you ladies were reading that as we were doing the warm-up last night. And you were sharing with, there were a couple of ladies who actually read that book. Anyway, but her book and her actual position, actually, you know, is a great example of a woman who has it all, who has a great family, who has a great job. And I know one of the areas that I'm very passionate about, in addition to, you know, the pay equity and is just to make sure that women are recognized and are actually be able to be included at the boards of Fortune 500 companies, because there aren't that many women across the United States that actually are on board positions for profit organizations. There are a lot in the nonprofit field, but not as many in the for-profit field. So somebody like, you know, Sheryl Sandberg, she's a great example. For instance, she's a member of she's a board member of the Walt Disney Company, of the Center for Global Development, so the Kraft Company. So she's involved in a number of different board positions, and I just mentioned that to share with you that it's kind of exciting. That we're moving in the right direction. So thank you for all the work that we together do in terms of advancement of women.